Kevin Nelson. Here's a look at what's going on this week in the news. We begin with news from the Vatican. Not only was May 24th Pentecost Sunday this year, but it was also the World Day of Prayer for the Church in China, which is observed each year on the Feast of Our Lady Help of Christians. Catholics in China invoke Mary, venerated at the Marian Shrine of Sheshan near Shanghai each May 24th. Pope Francis had asked Catholics worldwide to pray for the Church in China. Rome Reports has more on this special day of prayer.
Catholics in China have a very uncertain future. Despite the country's cordial exchanges with the Vatican, Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that religions in the country should be Chinese and cannot have foreign influence. So, for example, the Pope cannot appoint bishops or influence Chinese Catholics. Pope Francis recently said that the Church will once again remember and pray for Chinese Catholics on May 24th.
Anche noi chiederemo a Maria di aiutare I cattolici in Cina ad essere sempre testimoni credibili di questo amore misericordioso in mezzo al loro popolo e a vivere spiritualmente uniti alla roccia di Pietro su cui è costruita la Chiesa.
In 2007, Pope Benedict XVI started the Day of Prayer for the Church in China. In a letter to Chinese Catholics, he said that every May 24th, Catholics from throughout the world will pray for them. He assured them that, quote, "Your sufferings past and present for the holy name of Jesus and your intrepid loyalty to his vicar on earth will be rewarded, even if at times everything can seem a failure." There are 12 million Catholics in China. They are divided between the underground church, which is loyal to Rome, and the Chinese Patriotic Church, which is ruled by Beijing.
Looking now at news from around the world, the editorial boards of the New York Times and the Seattle Times, along with a dozen members of Congress, have joined the call for an end to jailing families whose immigration cases are pending. They are also calling on other reforms of immigrant detention. The editorial boards in their articles cited a recent report by Migration and Refugee Services of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Center for Migration Studies. The report drew on international law, analysis of who is detained, how the mostly for-profit prison industry manages detention, and bishops' personal experiences with people in detention. It called for more supervised release, better case management, and community support programs to ensure that people show up for court appearances or deportation orders. The New York Times editorial board said the detention system denies victims due process of law, punishing them beyond the scale of any offense. It also shatters families and traumatizes children. The editorial board said that as a system of mass incarceration, particularly of women and children fleeing persecution, it is immoral. The Seattle Times is encouraging lawmakers to support a bill introduced by Washington Democratic Representative Adam Smith, the Accountability in Immigration Detention Act, which calls for new oversight and standards, including limits on solitary confinement and requirements for adequate nutrition and prompt medical attention. In news now from around the world, Salvadorans and pilgrims from around the world came together in celebration for the beatification of Archbishop Oscar Romero on May 23rd in San Salvador. Ceremonies began on May 22nd with a procession and a vigil mass, followed by the beatification on the 23rd, which was seen all over the world. Catholic News Service talked with some of the pilgrims attending this very special event.
This is an event much bigger than his beatification. This is really the affirmation of a legacy. And this legacy didn't end with Romero, it continues. There's young priests here who never knew Romero, but the legacy continues.
Here it's not just about the blessing or, whatever. It's so much more than that. It's his legacy here, and he's that symbol of hope. And I think that it's going to spark a lot more hope.
Like Jesus, he was very close to the poor. His sensibility for the poor was something he had from his younger years. When he was in Rome, in his spiritual writings, he says, the poor are the representation of Christ, so we have to love them. So he was always like that, and Jesus was touching his eyes all the time to see better how to say about the poor.
So it's bringing us together, as Pope Francis is saying. We should smell more like the sheep and not so much underarm deodorants.
It's a legacy that we want to celebrate today, and that's what we're here, joining other faithfuls from different parts of the world and to this historical moment here in El Salvador.
The beatification was presided over by Cardinal Angelo Amato, head of the Vatican's Congregation for Saints' Causes. Archbishop Romero was assassinated in 1980 while celebrating Mass just a day after pleading and ordering soldiers to stop killing innocent civilians. And finally in the news, in a video message to a Christian Unity event in Phoenix, Arizona, Pope Francis said that the devil knows that Christians are disciples of Christ, that they are one. The Pope said the devil doesn't care if they are evangelicals or Orthodox or Lutherans or Catholics. They are all Christians. The Pope went on further to say that Christians must seek unity together. They must pray for each other and work together to assist the poor and vulnerable. And the gathering in Phoenix was sponsored by the John 17 movement, which is named after the Bible passage in which Jesus prays for the unity of the disciples. The Pope told those gathered that he would spend the day praying with them for the grace of unity. Well, that is all the information we have for you this time. I'm Kevin Nelson. Don't forget, you can keep up to date on Catholic news throughout the week with Catholic Newsbreak right here on the Catholic TV network.